Alan Dershowitz knew he was lying about a lot of the things he said to me. He knew that. He wrote on the Harvard Law School website that my mother was a collaborator with the Nazis during World War II.
That's an insult.
No, it's way beyond an insult.
Yeah, to put it lightly.
He knew it. He wanted to get a rise out of me. But they don't care about whether it's true or not, because if it serves the cause, it's true. I know that mentality. I'm an old man now. I've gone through life. You know the Joni Mitchell song, I've seen love from both sides now. I've seen politics from all sides now. I've looked at love from both. You know that song?
I like Joni Mitchell a lot. I don't know if I know the tune though.
No, you have to know it. I've looked at.
Do you know what album it's on?
No, it was very popular. Everyone sang it. Judy Collins sang it, but it was Joni Mitchell's song. I've looked at love from both sides now. When you put this on the web, you can put the music on. It's nice. It was a song of my generation. I've looked at life from both sides now. Politics in particular. I had a friend, he was a Vietnamese communist, high up in what was called the National Liberation Front. He took me on as his protege. He was my mentor. And at that time, I would say this is the late 70s, there was some question about whether or not Anne Frank wrote the diary. There was some insinuation that her father, Otto Frank, had in some ways doctored it after the war. And credible people, let me be clear, credible people were validating the claim, okay? And the guy's name, I'm sure he's passed now, his name was Nguyen Van Lan, Nguyen, Nguyen Van Lan, the high-ranking member in the Vietnamese communist. And we once got in the subject of the Anne Frank diary, because as I said, it was a local sensation for a little while. And I remember his response to me. He said, listen to it closely. He said, even if she didn't write it, she wrote it. Even if she didn't write it, she wrote it. You understand? If it serves the cause, even if it's not true, it's true. And that's Alan Dershowitz, and that's Sheryl Sandberg. I'm Israel Chai. Israel lives. The Jewish people live. It's their moment. They came under attack on October 7th. Now the whole world is attacking them and accusing them of genocide. We have to close ranks. Am Yisrael Chai. Israel lives. That's the mentality. I once, by accident, I was on the Upper East Side, which I'm not normally on, with a friend of mine, a Lebanese friend of mine, who was treating me to dinner, and Alan Dershowitz is in the restaurant. And my friend recognizes him. I point him out, of course I recognize him. And my friend says, you want me to call him over? Oh, God, that was one of those moments, because I knew my mother, okay? I didn't know her as well as I thought I knew her. You learn what you don't know as you get older, or you realize things that you didn't understand at the time. But I thought I knew her. And I knew that after what Alan Dershowitz said about her, if I didn't take, I'm serious now, I can be prone to theatrical exaggeration, mostly for humor, but I can also be quite literal, morally serious. If I didn't take the first train down to Cambridge and throttle Alan Dershowitz, she would never speak to me again. You get me? You said that's, what'd you call it, an insult? No, it's way beyond insult, my friend. You're saying that my mother collaborated with the people who exterminated her family. That's way beyond insult. Okay? In 1979, I attended with my mother a trial in Düsseldorf. At that point, it was West Germany, of the last guards. It was the last major trial of the guards of the Majdanek concentration camp. And as you can imagine, it was for my mother, I don't know, facing destiny in reverse. We didn't know that the guards were released every night on their own recognizance. And the guards walked freely in the courthouse. And my mother was just beside herself. She was screaming, "You let those animals walk in the courthouse? You let those," she was off. I don't, begrudge her or anything. I'm just telling you. And then one night, after she gave her testimony, the worst of the guards was a woman named Birgitta. And after we gave the testimony, we're walking down the staircase of the courthouse. We walk out into the street of Düsseldorf. My mother, she's to my left. I turn to my right, almost shoulder to shoulder, is Birgitta. So I didn't know what to do. I waited for Birgitta to get like maybe 100 or 200 feet ahead of us. It was dark already. I turned to my mother and I said, "Mom, do you know who that is?" She squinted, she looked, she said, her eyes like, a doe in the headlights. "Birgitta?" I said, "Yeah." And I turned to my mother. I said, "What do you want me to do?" She went like this, "Get her! Get her! They think we're sheep! Get her!" And she knew if I did what she wanted me to do, and I knew what she wanted me to do, I would get arrested, I'd get life. And my mother loved me too much, way too much, over the top. Get her! So back to the Indian restaurant. When the guy said, "Should I call him over?" I thought my mother would despise me, hate me. But you know what? My curiosity got the better of me. It did. I'm ashamed. Actually, I have to be honest, I'm ashamed. Just bring him over. And Dershowitz wanted to come over. You know why?
Why?
He wanted to normalize our relationship. Not because he cares about me as a person, but because he said all these disgusting things. And I was accepting him. So it sort of canceled what he did. And he sat down. I said, I'm just curious about something. Why did you say those things about my mother? I'm curious. And he said, well, you wrote this. And I said, look, Professor Dershowitz, I'm not one to begrudge other people's achievements. When they are deserving of respect, I respect them. You went to Brooklyn College, a modest college, where, as it happens, I teach now, but I'm talking about the present. And then you went to Yale Law School, and you graduated first in your class. You must be a smart guy. And then you end up being the youngest tenured professor at Harvard Law School. No small achievement. I recognize that. I said, now I've read all your books the last 30 years, and they're completely worthless. They're garbage. I was surprised at his reaction. You know what his reaction was when I said that? He just shrugged his shoulders like, what can I do about it? Which is true, because he was smart enough to know. They were pure junk. They were garbage, worthless, totally. I don't say I'll acknowledge an achievement, but I'm also going to acknowledge garbage. I said about Benny Morris, your first book, some excellent. I keep them with pride in my bookshelf. Your more recent stuff, pure garbage. You should be ashamed of it. Good is good, bad is bad. I said, worthless. But you can read, that's for sure. I didn't say that. I never said my mother was a capo. That. Please, I said, let's not go there. Let's not go there. What you're saying is not true. So you know what he said to me? He said, after what you said about me plagiarizing the book, what did you expect me to do? I said, he knew that what he said about my mother wasn't true, but he didn't care. What do you expect me to do? I'm going to get even. I'm going to get even with you. But in general, Dershowitz knows everything he writes about Israel is not true. Of course he knows. Of course he knows. But it makes no difference. It's the cause. He came from a very conservative, I guess Orthodox, but I don't want to say for sure, Jewish home. And Am Yisrael Chai, Israel lives. And it was exactly the mindset of Nagu Manlan. If it serves the cause, even if it's not true, it's true. Even if it's not true, it's true.